makes Canelo so dangerous? What makes him so dangerous? What makes Canelo so dangerous?
What's going on, you guys? So Jermall Charlo has an interview with Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast. Salute to Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast. We had an interview with Jermall Charlo, and Jermall Charlo talked about Canelo Alvarez turning down a $50 million offer, David Benavidez, of course, Boo Boo Andrade, and his situation in middleweight division. But one thing that really stood out is that he would like to fight Terence Bud Crawford. Hit that like button for your boy. Give me the HBO special. That's the Help a Brother Out special. We're in the road to 20,000 subscribers. But so Jermall Charlo was on the Last Stand podcast, and he got asked questions about his situation, what's going on, and Jermall Charlo. I don't know whether I believe what he was saying. Right when you watch the interview, I don't necessarily know if I believe what he was saying. Right. They asked some great questions. Brian Custer in Last Stand podcast, they asked the best questions. He even have people from the internet come ask some questions, and it'd be some really good questions. I don't know. Jermall Charlo said that David Benavidez, he's bringing nothing to the table right now. When it's time, when it's ready, and when it makes sense, right? He said Munguia turned down an opportunity. He said Triple G, they overlooking him, right?
Did your side to attempt to accept that petition?
We accepted it. What happened to Andre? What happened to Demetrius Andre? He left our division, right?
Yeah, he moved up.
And actually, he didn't move up yet. Demetrius Andre didn't move up yet. He's still really at 160. He didn't fight the Zach Parker guy. He went pull out due to injury, similar to what you're doing right now, Jermall Charlo. Yeah, he runs around the Demetrius Andre fight, brings up the fact that the situation happened years ago with Jermall Charlo. The fight poured out about 7 years ago. He brings up that, said we can't keep giving this guy opportunities and all this shit, right?
Dude has no pride. He was supposed to fight my brother back at 154. He canceled that fight too. We're not gonna keep giving you all these opportunities and you don't take them. Everybody else.
I mean, you ain't taking no opportunities though, right? Jermall Charlo is the one taking these opportunities, right? Jermall Charlo, not quite so much. He was just about to fight Maya Selecki on Juneteenth, but you pulled out due to a back injury. So we haven't seen you since your fight with Juan Montiel. Who is that, right? I mean, is guys in the middleweight division really running from Jermall Charlo? I mean, let's be honest. Are these guys really running from Jermall Charlo?
A whole generation of fighters. Jermall Charlo hasn't fought a whole generation of fighters. This whole era of fighters, he hasn't fought. Chris Eubanks, Daniel Jacobs, Triple G. He turned down the Canelo fight. I know 100% he turned down the Canelo fight. I wouldn't lie to y'all. I know 100%. And then years later, Jermall Charlo came out and told you he ducked Canelo. Demetrius Andrade, Laura. He turned down the Laura fight, y'all. He's turned down the Laura fight at least twice that I know of. At least twice. Trust me on that. Laura used to beat him up as a kid, and he hasn't forgotten it. He doesn't want to touch Laura. I mean, it's like 10 fighters he hasn't fought. Fought Jared Hurd. He hasn't fought Jared Hurd in 2 weight classes. Jared Hurd is a 160 guy now. It's like 10 fighters. How do 10 fighters duck you? He lost to Matt Coralball that night. Everybody knows it. Everybody saw it. He lost that fight 115, 113. 100% he lost that fight. I believe, and that was the night Al Heyman really understood Jermall Charlo ain't that good. Jermall Charlo, your career is over. It's simple. Who you gonna fight? Canelo's never fighting you. You're not gonna fight Benavidez. You have Caleb Plant's not gonna fight you. You don't add nothing to his career. Darrell might fight you. He's at the end of his career. I don't know if he wants a belt or some money. I don't know what he wants. But who you gonna fight? And then they gonna start comparing you to your brother, and that's gonna eat you alive. And guess what Jermall Charlo gonna do? He just gonna salivate off of that shit. Oh yeah, I'm better than my brother.
And yeah, I mean, really, I didn't have to say it. Fred from Barbershop said it. Salute to Fred from Barbershop. He said it. I didn't really got to say it. He broke it down for you. I mean, Jermall Charlo, we haven't seen you. We haven't seen much of you. And you doing a lot of talking. You ain't doing no walking. You know, Demetrius Andrade, if he's still there, I mean, don't run away from the smoke, right? Don't run away from the smoke, right? You know, Demetrius Andrade is still there. He said, you say he got no pride, then go beat him up and take his belt. Unify, right? Come on, Jermall.
Interesting. So you said, hey, look, if you
I'll fight
let's get it.
anybody. I'll fight anybody. I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter at heart. So as long as it makes sense, he's going through management trouble or something. I'm not into all that. I don't.
As long as it makes sense, right? As long as it makes no. It makes sense, bro. You're 30-something years old now. You got more time. You got more time behind you than you do in front of you in this boxing shit, bro. So, like, what's the making sense shit all about? You know what I'm saying? How much we haven't seen you? Like, what does it got to make sense for, right? I mean, but Benavidez, he said that's one of the fights that he would like to have. One of the fights that he would look forward to in 2023, right? One of the fights that he'll look forward to is Benavidez in 2023.
The world want to see it. I mean, he just lost to Bevo. You want to tune up? You want to tune up? Yeah.
That's him kind of calling out Canelo Alvarez. You know, Canelo Alvarez lost to Dimitri Bivol. He said that he wanted to tune up. You know, Canelo Alvarez turned down a $50 million offer. I think it was a 2 or 3 fight deal. I think Errol Spence was part of that deal. Canelo Alvarez went the Bivol route, and it ended up being the wrong route, right? You know, it ended up. Hey, that's what happens, right? Canelo thought he can go ahead and lump Bivol up, and we saw what happened there, right? But Jermall Charlo sitting back, rehabbing his back injury. And a fan asked the question, right? He also spoke about Jermall Charlo, and he said Crawford's too small for Jermall, blah, blah, blah. You know, he said Crawford is too small for Jermall. You know, he don't want this Texas heat and all this other stuff, right? You know, this is what he typically says. He asked who will win between Errol Spence. Of course, he said Errol Spence. But he got asked, is there one guy that you would want to fight that nobody would ever even think, well, you fighting? And you wouldn't believe who he says.
Out there that we haven't been talking about, that we'd be surprised about. You say, no, I've always wanted to fight this cat.
Terence Crawford.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah. I'll fight him. I'll fight you, Terence. Yeah. I'll come back down to 54 and fight Terence Crawford. Yeah.
Okay. Fourth question.
We haven't heard Jermall Charlo call out anybody like that in quite some time. Yeah, it would be, you know, taken for Jermall Charlo to call out a welterweight, but yeah, Jermall Charlo calls out Terence Crawford. He said that he thought he was going to get the Canelo Alvarez fight. He was running around his living room, $50 million, etc. So check out the interview on Brian Custer, man. Great interview. But Jermall Charlo, man, very interesting character, man. Very interesting guy. You know, he calls out Terence Crawford. He calls out Terence Bud Crawford. You know, he calls him out in a pretty big way. You know, he calls him out. You know, maybe he was joking. You know, maybe it's not really realistic for him to really squeeze back down to 154 at this point. But he said he'll come down to 154 for Terence Bud Crawford. I wonder if Terence Bud Crawford will entertain fighting the big Charlo if the smaller Charlo don't want to fight him. Yeah, but Jermall Charlo is on Last Stand Podcast. Go check him out. Like, subscribe, holla at your boy. Peace out.